In the ready position of the baseball pitch, we can see at the neck the axis is laterally rotated, and at the elbows where the radius, ulna, and humerus connect, there is flexion. Located at the wrists where the radius, ulna, and carpals come together, there is dorsiflexion in one hand and plantar flexion in the other. At the fingers, where the carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges all come together, there is flexion. And we see extension in both the left and right legs, where the tibia, fibula, femur, and patella come together.
For the wind-up, the neck is laterally rotated. It is also bent to exemplify flexion. The elbows also exemplify flexion, but also abduction. And the bones involved are the radius, ulna, and humerus. The wrist is bent to exemplify dorsiflexion. The bones involved are the radius, ulna, and carpals. The fingers, which include the carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges, are an example of flexion. The hips, which are rotated, is an example of abduction, and the bone involved is the coxal. The leg, or the thigh portion, the bones involved are the tibia, fibula, femur, and patella, and this is an example of adduction. The knee is an example of flexion, and the bone involved is the patella. And the left leg is extended, and the knee is an example of flexion on the left, and the ankle is left and inverted. For the follow-through and release, the neck is medially rotated, the right shoulder is elevated, and the bone involved in that is the scapula. The right elbow is an example of abduction, and the left elbow is an example of flexion. The bones involved are the radius, ulna, and humerus. The wrist on the left is medially rotated, and the right wrist is pronated, and also it is an example of dorsiflexion. The bones involved are the radius, ulna, and carpals. The torso is an example of flexion, and the knees are also flexion. The bone involved is the patella. The right ankle is an example of plantar flexion.